The ocean keeps its darkest secrets buried deep. Some never resurface. In 1998, a vibrant 23-year-old woman vanished without a trace from a luxury cruise ship in the Caribbean. Her name was Amy Lynn Bradley. She wasn't just a passenger. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend. And what happened after her disappearance still chills investigators to this day. But the deeper story? It only raises more questions. Why did her parents start receiving disturbing emails years later? Who was the strange man seen walking with her at dawn? And why did the FBI keep running into dead ends? Her story never truly ended. Before we continue, take a brief moment to type justice for Amy in the comments. Her family never stopped searching, and neither should we. It began in March 1998. When the Bradley family, Ron, Iva, and their children Amy and Brad, boarded the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas. It was supposed to be a carefree vacation before Amy started a new job. She had just graduated from college and was looking forward to spending quality time with her family. The cruise set sail from San Juan, Puerto Rico, heading toward the warm turquoise waters of the Caribbean. The atmosphere was festive. Tropical music, cocktails, laughter. Amy wasn't just another tourist. She was athletic, confident, a strong swimmer, and had even played college basketball. Her brother Brad described her as adventurous yet grounded, someone who always kept her wits about her. But even early in the trip, Amy's parents noticed something unsettling. It wasn't Amy. It was the way certain crew members looked at her. Amy's mother, Iva, saw it first. The lingering stares, the way some men on board seemed to follow her with their eyes. These weren't casual glances. They were too long, too deliberate. Something about it didn't sit right. On the night of March 23rd, the family attended a formal dinner. Amy wore a black top and white skirt, looking radiant. Afterward, she and Brad headed to the ship's disco club to enjoy the music and dance. That night would be the last time anyone saw Amy safe. Brad remembered that night clearly. In the ship's disco, Amy laughed and danced, mostly with the ship's band members, particularly a bass player who went by the name Yellow. They seemed friendly, nothing alarming on the surface. Around 3:30 a.m., Brad and Amy returned to their cabin. Brad went straight to bed. Amy was still there, alive and well, but by 6 a.m., she was gone. When Ron Bradley woke up that morning, Amy's bed was empty. Her sandals were still by the bed, along with her cigarettes and her ID. But Amy herself had vanished. Panic set in quickly. The family began searching every deck, every lounge, every poolside chair. Amy wasn't in the restaurants. She wasn't sunbathing, and she hadn't disembarked at port. The crew's reaction was strangely casual. They did a soft search, as if she had simply wandered off. After all, she was an adult, they said. But then came the first disturbing lead. A passenger claimed to have seen Amy at around 6 a.m., walking near an elevator with a man who looked like Yellow. She didn't appear frightened, but the timing and secrecy were alarming. Why would Amy be walking with him at dawn without telling her family? Even more troubling, the crew hesitated to make any public announcement about her disappearance. Protocol, they said. They didn't want to cause panic among guests. But every hour mattered. Despite the Bradley family's pleas, the ship did not turn back or dock early. Instead, the Rhapsody of the Seas kept its itinerary, drifting further away from any chance of an early ground search. By the time Royal Caribbean contacted the proper authorities, the most crucial first 48 hours had already been lost. Just days after Amy vanished, a taxi driver in Curaçao came forward with a chilling story. He swore a woman matching Amy's description had approached his cab in a panic, begging to use his phone. But before he could react, two men appeared out of nowhere. The woman, Amy or someone who looked exactly like her, instantly went silent. Without a word, the men walked her away, and she disappeared into the crowd. The driver didn't report it immediately. He figured it was just a lover's quarrel. But when he later saw Amy's face on the news, he knew. I'm sure it was her. That statement lit a spark of hope in the Bradley family, but also deepened their fear. If it was Amy, she was off the ship, but she wasn't free. Then came another lead, even more disturbing. In 1999, a U.S. Navy officer claimed he encountered a young woman in a Curaçao brothel. She looked him in the eye and said, in perfect English, "My name is Amy Bradley. Please help me." The officer froze, stunned by the moment, afraid of the trouble he might face for being there. He kept quiet for months. By the time he went back, she was gone. Sightings like these kept surfacing over the years. Women with the same build, same green eyes, and identical tattoos. The Tasmanian devil on her shoulder, the gecko on her stomach. One of the most haunting tips came in 2005. The Bradleys received an anonymous email with 2 photographs attached. In them, a woman lay on a hotel bed, alive, but her eyes were hollow, distant. The tattoos were unmistakable. FBI analysts agreed. The woman bore a striking resemblance to Amy. But the images had been scraped from a Caribbean adult website, and by the time investigators tried to trace them, the source had vanished. Who sent those photos and why? Were they taunting the family? Or was it Amy, sending the only SOS she could? Behind closed doors, the FBI began to lean toward a horrifying theory, one the Bradleys had feared from the start. Amy Lynn Bradley had likely been abducted into a human trafficking ring. The clues were stacking up. The brothel sighting, the photographs from the escort website, the strange reluctance of certain people on board the ship to speak openly. Yet without hard evidence, the FBI's hands were tied, and Royal Caribbean, under mounting pressure, remained tight-lipped. Some believed they were protecting their brand. Others whispered that someone on board might have known more than they ever admitted. The Bradleys started to wonder, what if Amy had been targeted before the cruise even began? What if someone marked her from the very first day? One name kept coming up, Yellow, the bass player from the ship's band, Blue Orchid. Amy had been seen dancing with him just hours before she disappeared. Photos showed them smiling together. But when questioned, his answers were vague, too vague. Witnesses recalled him giving Amy extra attention that night, maybe even inviting her for drinks later. If he was the last known person to be with her, why didn't he step forward publicly? And why, according to rumors, did he leave the ship without ever giving a full statement? The Bradleys begged investigators to dig deeper, but every step forward only made the timeline murkier. One of the most criticized aspects of the case was the delay. When Amy didn't show up for breakfast, her parents instantly knew something was wrong. Ship security brushed it off. She probably went ashore early. But Amy had left everything behind, her shoes, her cigarettes, her ID. By the time the crew initiated any search, they were already docked in Curaçao. If Amy had been taken off the ship, those precious morning hours, the difference between rescue and disappearance, were already gone. Why hadn't they sealed the exits? Why no public announcement? It felt, to the Bradleys, like someone wanted silence. And the more they looked at the gaps in the timeline, the harder it was to explain them away as simple incompetence. Amy's disappearance was far from unique. Since the early 1990s, dozens of passengers have vanished from cruise ships, often without a trace. The ocean keeps its secrets, and jurisdiction in international waters is a tangled mess. Cruise companies often conduct their own internal investigations. And in Amy's case, the Bradleys felt shut out at every turn. They were given generic updates, denied access to full passenger lists, and never allowed to see all the ship security footage. Were these just policy flaws? Or was someone actively hiding the truth? Then came one of the most haunting accounts yet. In 2005, a woman named Judy Moore contacted the Bradleys with a chilling story. She said she had met a distressed young woman in a Caribbean hotel bathroom. The woman whispered, "I'm Amy Bradley. Please help me." Before Judy could react, 2 men appeared, grabbed the woman, and pulled her away. The details matched Amy perfectly. Her voice, her mannerisms, even her tattoos. But just like every other lead, the trail went cold. Royal Caribbean eventually offered the Bradleys a quiet settlement after years of pressure. The amount was never disclosed, but the family believed the cruise line knew far more than it admitted. Certain ship operation documents from the day Amy vanished have never been released. Even the FBI seemed to stall. The Bradleys started to lose faith in official systems, wondering if justice would have to come from whispers, sightings, and private leads instead. So they hired a private investigator. This PI had decades of experience in missing persons cases across the Caribbean. He uncovered unofficial reports of a woman matching Amy's description seen on several nearby islands. One sighting came from a brothel in Curaçao, the very same island where the ship had docked on the morning she disappeared. The PI suspected Amy was still alive but trapped in a network too powerful for local authorities or even the FBI to easily touch. Multiple sightings over the years matched her unique tattoos. A Tasmanian devil on her shoulder, a gecko on her stomach. There were reports from Barbados, Venezuela, and Colombia, all eerily similar. The PI believed Amy was being held, not just missing. One ex-U.S. Navy officer claimed he'd encountered her in a brothel in Barbados in 1999. She allegedly told him her name and begged for help. Before he could react, she was dragged away by two men. He didn't report the incident for months, fearing the consequences of admitting where he'd been. When he finally did, it was too late. The trail had gone cold again. Years passed. The Bradleys could not grieve because they had no body. They could not move on because every so often, hope would flare to life and then die again. In 2005, a photograph appeared on a Caribbean escort website, showing a woman with Amy's build, tattoos, and haunting eyes. Listed under the name Jazz, the image was analyzed by the FBI, and Amy's parents were convinced it was her. But the site disappeared before authorities could trace its origin. Was it Amy reaching out? Or another cruel hoax? The Bradleys decided they had no choice but to go back to Curaçao themselves. In 2005, Ron and Iva Bradley returned to Curaçao, not as tourists, but as grieving parents clinging to a shred of hope. They retraced Amy's steps, showing her photo to locals, talking to bartenders, shop owners, and cab drivers. Several people claimed they'd seen a woman who looked like Amy recently. One bartender's words froze them. "I haven't seen her lately, but she used to come in here. Quiet girl. Always watch the door." That one sentence reignited the family's darkest theory. Amy was being watched. If she was alive, why hadn't she escaped? Whispers in the trafficking world said women were often told that if they tried to run, their families would be killed. Amy, being fiercely protective, might have stayed silent to keep them safe. But the Bradleys faced a nightmare jurisdiction problem. Amy was a U.S. citizen who disappeared in international waters and was possibly seen on foreign soil. That meant the FBI had limited power. Interpol had been involved, but by the time tips reached them, they were usually cold. It wasn't that no one cared. It was that no one could act fast enough. And meanwhile, someone out there might have been watching the Bradleys, too. In 2008, a Canadian tourist on vacation in Curaçao claimed she'd spoken to a nervous young woman on the beach who said her name was Amy and that she was from Virginia. The woman kept looking over her shoulder and said she wasn't supposed to talk to anyone. When asked if she needed help, she walked away quickly. By the time the Bradleys got the tip and rushed there, she was gone. That same year, the FBI reopened the case with a new team, re-interviewed witnesses, reanalyzed old photos, and even brought in digital forensic experts. One retired agent admitted off the record, "This case never felt like a simple disappearance. Too many layers, too many red flags." But even with renewed effort, there was no proof of life and no body. Then the Bradleys learned from an inside source that a more detailed Royal Caribbean internal report existed, one that had never been made public. It allegedly contained full timelines, staff interviews, surveillance access logs from the morning Amy vanished. Ron Bradley tried to get it through legal channels. Denied. Even a formal Freedom of Information request hit a wall. Why would the cruise line keep those details sealed? Unless it was to protect themselves. In 2009, a former cruise security officer came forward anonymously. He claimed certain surveillance footage had been viewed privately by higher-ups before being turned over to the FBI, and that some camera angles were suddenly corrupted. If true, that meant not just negligence, but a cover-up. That same year, a national TV investigative show aired a special on Amy's case. The Bradleys shared images, timelines, and their raw emotions. Tips poured in, one from a witness who swore they saw Amy in 2000 on a Caribbean island with two men. She looked scared, but didn't call for help. Like every lead before it, it faded into nothing. By 2011, more than a decade had passed. The Bradleys, physically and emotionally drained, made the painful choice to scale back public appearances. They'd hoped the media spotlight would bring answers. Instead, it had mostly brought shadows. They kept their tip line open. They still hoped. But in interviews, they started speaking about Amy in the past tense. Until one day, a letter arrived. No return address. No demands. Just 3 chilling words. Still alive. Help! The handwriting looked eerily similar to Amy's, according to a retired graphologist the family consulted. But there was no way to prove it. No location. No instructions. No money request. It was either Amy's final whisper or the cruelest hoax yet. By 2012, the FBI had largely stepped back. The case was still open, but now officially labeled inactive. The Bradleys were stunned. They had pinned their last hopes on federal help. Why walk away when human trafficking hadn't been ruled out? That year, a retired Navy intelligence analyst approached the Bradleys privately. He believed Amy might have been taken to a private Caribbean island, hidden in plain sight, but beyond the reach of law enforcement. His reasoning was chilling. Many private islands are off the grid. No regular patrols. No jurisdiction. But was this expert insight, or just another theory feeding their worst fears? Still, the Bradleys quietly funded private searches. And then in 2016, a travel agent brought them something new. A tourist brochure. In the background of a beach photo, a woman walked alongside 2 other people. She wasn't looking at the camera. The image was blurry, but the resemblance was there. Could Amy have been living in plain sight, still under control? Back home in Virginia, Amy's bedroom remained untouched. Her posters, photos, and notebooks stayed exactly as she'd left them. Not as a shrine, her parents insisted, but as a place for her to come home to. But the years were stacking up, and with them came the question, was this room a beacon or just a frozen monument of grief? Online, Amy's case took on a second life. Reddit threads, YouTube deep dives, true crime podcasts. Some called it a corporate cover-up. Others believed she had escaped and chosen to disappear. A few held out hope she was still alive, waiting for rescue. But experts pointed out, Amy had been making plans for the day she vanished. She was close to her family. There were no signs she wanted to run. Dr. Grace Landon, forensic psychologist, put it bluntly, people who vanish willingly leave clues. Amy left nothing. If she didn't leave on her own, then someone else orchestrated her disappearance. The Bradleys' fight also helped change cruise safety laws, forcing companies to report missing persons faster. But those changes came too late for Amy. One of the most haunting alleged sightings remained the same. 2005, a U.S. Navy officer in a Caribbean brothel. A young woman approaches him. "My name is Amy Bradley. I need help." 2 men pull her away before he can react. By the time he reports it, 2 years later, the brothel has been burned to the ground. Years later, Brad, Amy's younger brother, shared something he'd never told the public. An anonymous email claiming Amy was alive, containing details only the family would know. The account disappeared hours later. Was it her? Or a trap? In their last desperate move, the Bradleys hired another private investigator, one who specialized in international trafficking networks. Months later, he came back with sketches, witness statements, and reports of a compound in Curaçao. High walls, barbed wire, armed guards, women coming and going, silent and watchful. One witness swore a woman inside matched Amy's voice, build, and tattoos. The Bradleys had an address. Now came the hardest decision, involve the FBI or go private. They went private. A small off-the-book surveillance team was sent in. The final update they received: "We're getting close. Something's happening." Then silence. Phones went dead. Emails bounced. The team had vanished. An off-the-record contact later told him the compound had been emptied 2 days after surveillance was spotted. Whoever was running it saw everything. The investigator resurfaced weeks later, shaken, refusing to speak. Whatever he'd found, he wasn't willing to share. The Bradleys were left with one unbearable truth. They might have been this close, and the door had slammed shut forever. Years passed. Amy's face stayed on missing posters. Her case stayed on Interpol's list. Her parents spoke at trafficking awareness events, telling anyone who would listen, as long as Amy hasn't been found, there's still a chance. Today, Amy Lynn Bradley's case remains one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries in modern true crime. It's not just about a missing woman. It's about the questions that never get answered, the voices that refuse to fade, the truth that the ocean has kept for decades. Maybe the answers will surface one day. Until then, Amy's story remains everyone's unfinished story.